So, hi, vinyl community. My name is Jackson. That's Eric behind the veil and Chris down below. What is it? Relics from the 60s. Yeah, so I listened to a lot of 60s music that when I checked it, it was actually 70s music. We talked about that before. So I decided I was going to zero in on early and mid 60s and get two worthy records. They weren't contaminated by psych rock influences.
I had the same problem that I had the last time we did a 60s Relics, which is that I just don't have a whole lot of 60s records beyond jazz.
It's part of the long 1960s, which goes to late
Exactly.
74.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that's what I'll end up doing as this goes on. But I found two legit cities 60s recordings for today, one rock and one jazz.
Basically did, just, right after breakfast this morning. I looked at my records and checked some likely suspects out, and the dates worked out fine. So I've got evidence from the 60s. All right, so here we go. Freak Out by the Mothers of Invention, featuring, of course, none other than Frank Zappa and his debut recording from 1966, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, this is a great record because what it is a survey of all of the styles of music that were going on in that time and parody of said styles. So we've got stuff ranging from doo-wop to Dylan to more conventional rock to Edgar Varese. Unfinished Ballet in Two Tableaux, Return of the Son of Monster Magnet is dedicated to the to Varese, if I'm not mistaken, the French avant-garde composer. A great record that's really very inventive and fun. Yeah, styles shifting dramatically between from one track to the next. And occasionally there's even a little bit of political commentary or something approaching that, like on Trouble Coming Every Day, which is about the Watts riots in, I guess, 65, all delivered by Bob Dylan-esque urban troubadour. The Mothers of Invention. It's the 60s. It's all the 60s you need in one record. Trouble Coming Every Day, and also Help I'm a Rock with Kim Fowley on vocals. Probably the greatest song about sort of spiritual transmigration to have been recorded in this very elevated decade. So, just imagine, you're tripping out and getting in touch with the higher reality, and you find out that you're a rock. Freak Out record I've got is really freaking out, and it's going into that disreputable psychedelic territory. Recorded in 1969, released in 1970, so I think this qualifies. Twink, Think Pink. This is a great record. Twink was involved in any number of musical projects, probably ranging from the Pretty Things to the Pink Fairies, and then he was even in a band with Syd Barrett. But this particular record is really a fabulous work of art. It's got instrumentals, songs with lyrics, in a variety of styles, from fairly straightforward songs to these really kind of one song's called Fluid, and it's very liquid and flowing. So there's lots of sonic textures here. Blink was a drummer primarily, and the percussive element is here is really great. It comes out especially in the Mexican Grass War, which is this ferocious bit of percussion with this sort of marching beat that I don't know chronicles some kind of bellicose activity. It really sounds like this is another record that sums up the 60s. It's kind of got this great swirling, sort of hallucinogenic, trippy quality to it that comes out. in every song, which then the songs kind of flow into each other. And their titles, I think, are indicative of the kind of mood and atmosphere that are captured. We've got The Coming of the One, 10,000 Words, Dawn of Magic, Tiptoe on the Highest Hill, somewhat more straightforward numbers, like Rock and Roll the Joint. But even that is not very rock and rolly in a conventional sense.
It's Jackson.
Jackson, what you got?
So this is Joe Meek, The Emotional Cosmic Occult World of Joe Meek. So this is a compilation of 45s from the early 60s. I couldn't quite get all the dates on this, but Mississippi Records put out this. They issued this, I believe, for the first time. All of the numbers on this, just a nice little spaceship on the background that gives you an indication of the music. All of these charted in the top 50 as 45 singles at the time. It's a great introduction to Joe Meek, and these are mostly vocal related around a singer. Although he puts a lot of the bands together, he's a British producer of experimental pop, and he uses, well, he's some proto electronica, really, because he's using so many effects, reverb tanks, echo, tape loops, limiters, compressors, found sounds, and the secret weapon, the claveline, which is some kind of primitive space age sounding organ. He doesn't use any synthesizers, evidently. He also had an early hit, number one hit with Telstar by the Tornadoes, and they have a whole album of electronic surf music, so that's pretty cool. He was an obsessive, and he recorded in graveyards at night, hopefully to summon Buddy Holly back from the grave. And yeah, and he wrote and produced all the stuff in a room above his garage. And he changed music history in the process. There's a bunch of different group names here, sort of interesting. Mainly the standouts, two songs by the Blue Men. So that's Joe Meek's band they put together. They did a whole album. I don't have it, but it's called I Hear a New World in Outer Space Musical Fantasy. And he's also got another standout would be the Moon Trekkers. I believe I have another compilation that has a whole side of Moon Trekkers. That's also space age music. So I keep this in my R&B section because that's pretty much the songs are R&B, some surf, a little bit electric, sort of fuzzed out pop. My second choice is the classic Good, the Bad, and the Ugly from 1966. This is from a trilogy of films where there was a collaboration between Sergio Leone and Morricone. And it's got that famous musical theme, which is actually played on an arcana, which is a small wooden flute and choir. But here's the melody. Morricone is also employing whistling, howling, yodeling, reverb guitar, bells, prepared piano, and sound effects. Because he had little money for this first project, he used small orchestras sort of cobbled together in a theater setting. Small orchestras in a theater sound great recorded. So it really does have a great sound. It's not really Western music because it's a Civil War morality Western. And Clint Eastwood stars as the man with no name. There's three characters, good, bad, and the ugly. They each have a different musical theme that introduces them if you were interested in following that. And most of this is incidental music, Civil War marches, and these sort of journeys through the desert. So it's that kind of music. I have all three of these from the trilogy, and this has the strongest theme, but the other ones, I think the incidental music is even more powerful. So that original theme comes in at the end a little bit, but otherwise, that's the reason to have this. I think I've had this record for 40 years, and I had it to put on mixtapes back in the 80s. That one song. Yeah. I keep this in my Italian soundtrack section. And that be it. Handing it over to schizophrenically to Chris.
Out of the gate. Okay. Uh, Thank you, Jackson. And my first record is Deep Purple's self-titled release from 1969. This doesn't really sound like the Deep Purple that most people know, that people associate, that name with. This is like the previous iteration of the band. Like their first few albums, this was their third record. Their first few albums were much more like the Moody Blues or something like that. Gentler, more, psychedelic, with a pretty hefty dose of, neoclassical music, courtesy of their keyboardist. But this is a transitional record. This one definitely has more of a hard rock influence. Guitarist Richie Blackmore was sort of getting his stride as a songwriter, and he was becoming, I guess, the band leader. And the songs reflect that. So it's harder. It's pretty proggy. There's still a decided psychedelic influence as well. And there's a bit of neoclassical stuff, that never entirely went away. And they became, the Deep Purple that would go on to record, Space Trucking and Highway Star and Smoke on the Water and all that. But the songs on here are really good. I said, it's, there's a little bit, you can see where they're going, but you can also see where they had come from. This album did not sell and nobody liked it at the time, but it's grown in stature in the years since, and it's easy to see why. It's a good record. Okay, and my second record is John Coltrane's Interstellar Space. So this was recorded in 1967, not released until 74, though. But, Coltrane died in 1967 of cancer. And this was probably, one of the final things, probably one of his final recording dates to be released, I think. Things to know about Coltrane during this period were he had been moving for years towards a much freer, a more difficult sound, I suppose. If you see things that way. And this is possibly the purest expression of that freer sound of what he was going for in the final years of his life. The songs, I guess they were titled posthumously, but Mars, Venus, Jupiter, and Saturn. And this is a duet date that he did in just a couple of hours, I guess, with the drummer Rashid Ali, who was becoming known as one of the top avant-garde drummers at the time. At least on first listen, this is just a paint stripping record. It's just Coltrane and Ali. Ali is doing his multi-directional drumming thing, which is playing multiple rhythms at a time. So kind of going, in every direction all the time. And Coltrane is playing off that. And, so it sounds like a lot at first. But if you listen closely, this is an indescribably beautiful record. And there's a pretty easily discernible method going on here. Coltrane at the beginning of each song, he will, he shakes some bells and then he starts off with a motif, and then they fly up into the stratosphere together. And then by the end of the song, they come down and he sort of restates that motif, and then repeat the process for the next song. It's really something to hear. There's a real element of ritual going on here. It has the feeling of kind of a sacred record. And I'm not sure this has ever been reissued. It's not an easy record to find. This is the only copy I've ever seen in the wild, and it's pretty trashed. But again, great record. Can't recommend it highly enough.
That's a pantsuit.
That is a pantsuit. That's a handsome pantsuit. Freak out. Freak out.
Freak out. Freak out.
Freak out. Freak out.
Garage. Garage. Garage.